Rihan was just 19, a regular boy from a small town with big dreams but no direction. He scrolled through his phone for hours, laughed at memes, envied others' lives, and told himself, one day I'll make it big. But days passed, weeks passed, and the fire inside him began to fade into quiet frustration. One evening, after yet another pointless day, Rihan's father sat beside him. He didn't scold, he didn't preach, he just handed him a book. Live While You're Alive, the cover read, by Shiv Khera. Rihan scoffed. Another self-help book. But that night, he opened the first page, and something changed. The book didn't start by throwing big words or hard-to-follow philosophy. It started with a simple, powerful message. Winners don't do different things, they do things differently. That line hit Rihan like lightning. He paused, he reread it. He sat up straight for the first time in months. This wasn't a book, it was a mirror. Shiv Khera spoke about how life is not about how long we live, but how well we live. And in those first pages, Rihan realized he had been alive, but not really living. The book dug deep. It asked questions that no one had ever asked him. What will be your legacy? Are you living a life of purpose or just passing time? What are you doing today that your future self will thank you for? Rihan couldn't sleep that night, not because he was disturbed, but because he was awake. For the first time, he felt something rise inside him, not guilt, not regret, but a spark. That night was the beginning of a journey, not of success, but of significance. And this is the story of what happened when Rihan began to live, while he was still alive. Part 2. Responsibility is power. The next morning, Rihan woke up before the alarm, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The words from the book still echoed in his head. Responsibility is the price of greatness. Rihan had always blamed the world for his failures, the education system, his parents, society, even luck. But Shiv Khera didn't sugarcoat anything. He said it plainly. People who blame others for their failures never grow. Rihan paused on that line. He thought of all the excuses he had made over the years. Every "I can't" was really just "I won't." The book explained that freedom doesn't come from avoiding responsibility. It comes from embracing it. When you take charge of your life, you stop waiting and start creating. That chapter felt like a slap, but also a hug. It didn't shame him, it showed him what he could become. We are not animals driven by instincts. We are human beings guided by principles. Rihan never saw it that way. For the first time, he stopped asking, "Why is life so unfair?" and started asking, "What can I do to change my life today?" He began writing down small goals, waking up early, exercising, reading more, helping his mother in the kitchen. He smiled more, complained less. The changes were tiny, but they made him feel proud, not because others noticed, but because he noticed. And Shiv Khera kept reminding him, winners form the habit of doing things losers don't like to do. Rihan realized he didn't need to be the smartest or the richest. He just needed to be consistent. Every page whispered a new truth into his soul, and each one made him feel less like a dreamer and more like a doer. This wasn't just a book anymore, it was a blueprint, a friend, a guide, a call to rise, and take ownership of the one life he had, because if you don't take responsibility, someone else will write your story for you. And Rihan, he was finally holding the pen. Absolutely. Here's part 3 of the audiobook-style summary of Live While You're Alive by Shiv Khera. Continuing Rihan's transformational journey, strictly based on the book's content, written in emotional, story-driven narration for voiceover. Part 3, The Power of Attitude. A week had passed since Rihan began reading the book, and something had shifted. He still faced the same challenges. The world didn't suddenly get easier, but his attitude was no longer the same. One chapter hit him hard. Shiv Khera wrote, "It is not your position, but your disposition that determines your success." Rihan closed the book for a moment. He remembered how often he had thought, if only I had more money, more connections, better luck. But this line, it told him that Attitude was everything. That two people could go through the same storm and one would break while the other would build a boat. Positive thinking is not about expecting the best to happen every time. It's about accepting that whatever happens, you'll handle it. That idea struck deep. Rihan realized he had spent most of his life reacting to people, to problems, to pain. But now he wanted to respond. With strength, with faith, with clarity. He started paying attention to the way he spoke, the way he thought, the way he saw the world. He replaced "I can't" with "How can I?" He replaced "This always happens to me" with "What is this trying to teach me?" Shiv Khera didn't just talk about mindset, he gave examples, stories of real people who turned disasters into triumphs, people who had every reason to quit, but chose to stand. And one line stayed with Rihan more than anything else. Your attitude determines your altitude. It made him smile, because for the first time he understood success wasn't about luck or talent or timing, it was about how you choose to see the world, how you choose to show up every single day. That day, when a friend mocked his efforts, Rihan didn't snap. He didn't get defensive. He just smiled and said, "I'm working on myself. You should try it too." And in that moment, he knew he wasn't the same person anymore. He was still Rihan. But now he was becoming the version of himself he always dreamed of being. Part 4. Habits make or break us. By the third week, Rihan had filled the margins of the book with underlines, notes, stars, as if he was mapping out a new life. But one chapter made him pause. Not because it was inspiring, but because it was uncomfortable. Habits, that word, that one thing no one pays attention to. Until it's too late. Shiv Khera didn't hold back. He wrote, "We form habits. Then habits form us." Rihan read the line again. He thought about the small things he did every day without thinking. Waking up late, scrolling his phone for hours, procrastinating, avoiding difficult tasks. And he realized these weren't just behaviors, they were chains. Chains that were silently holding him back. The book laid it out clearly. Winners form the habit of doing things losers don't like to do. It wasn't about motivation, it was about discipline. Doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. Rihan remembered how he used to wait for the right mood to study or the perfect day to start his goals. But the truth was brutal. If you don't control your habits will control you. That night, he made a new list, not of goals, but of daily actions. Wake up at 6 a.m., read 10 pages. Exercise for 20 minutes. Plan the day, avoid negative news, reflect before sleep. Each one looked simple, but Shiv Khera had already warned him. Easy to do, easy not to do. And that's what separated average lives from exceptional ones. The tiny things done repeatedly without applause. It wasn't dramatic, there was no soundtrack, no spotlight, just one choice, followed by another. And slowly, Rihan began to feel it. That sense of control, that quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't shout, but shows. He understood now. Success wasn't something you chased, it was something you built, brick by brick, through habits. And the most powerful part, if habits could destroy you, they could also rebuild you. And Rihan, he had picked up the hammer. Part 5. Responsibility. The first step to freedom. Rihan sat on a park bench, the book resting on his lap, the wind flipping its pages like fate, whispering, "Go on. The next chapter is for you." It was titled simply, Responsibility, but the words inside it were anything but simple. Responsibility is accepting that we are the cause and the solution to what happens in our life. Rihan's hands tightened around the pages. For so long, he had blamed others. His parents for not understanding him, society for making things hard, even God for being silent when he needed answers. But this chapter held up a mirror. It said, responsibility does not mean taking the blame. It means taking charge. It wasn't about guilt, it was about power. Power to say, yes, this is where I am, but this is not where I'll stay. Shiv Khera explained it simply. People fall into 3 buckets: complainers, critics, and contributors. Rihan knew which one he had been most of his life. A complainer, always noticing problems but rarely offering solutions. But now he didn't want to be that person. He wanted to be a contributor, someone who adds, not subtracts. The book asked a haunting question. When you look in the mirror, do you see a victim or a victor? Rihan didn't sleep that night. He thought of all the decisions he had postponed, the risks he had avoided, the chances he never took. Because it was easier to point fingers than to look inward. But the truth hit hard. Freedom and responsibility are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. That week, Rihan began taking ownership, not just of his actions, but of his reactions. When he got rejected for a freelance job, he didn't say, "They don't value freshers." He said, "I need to improve my skills." When a friend let him down, he didn't say, "People are fake." He said, "I will set better boundaries." And every time he did this, he felt lighter, not because life got easier, but because he wasn't carrying the weight of excuses anymore. Responsibility wasn't a burden. Part 6. Attitude. Your greatest asset. It was raining that morning. Gray skies, puddles on the street. Rihan stood by the window, sipping chai, watching people rush with umbrellas. Some irritated, some smiling. That's when the line from the book echoed in his mind. Our attitude determines how we respond to life's challenges. It is more important than facts. Rihan flipped to the chapter on attitude, and what he read reshaped his view of everything. Shiv Khera wrote, "We can't choose how we are born, but we can choose how we live." The power was not in the circumstances, but in how we responded to them. That was attitude. Suddenly, memories flooded in. The exams he failed, the jobs he didn't get, the people who underestimated him. He always thought, "I'm unlucky." But now he realized he wasn't unlucky. He was just unprepared to face failure with the right mindset. And the book was crystal clear. A positive attitude does not mean everything will be perfect. It means we will handle everything, even the imperfect, better. Rihan remembered one story from the book about a man who lost both his legs in an accident. But instead of giving up, he became a motivational speaker, helping thousands rise again. Rihan was stunned. That man lost everything, but didn't lose his spirit. You're not responsible for your face, but you are responsible for your expression. That line hit home. Rihan had been walking through life with a frown, waiting for things to change. Without changing himself, he realized something deep. Your attitude isn't about smiling on good days, it's about standing tall on the bad ones. He started practicing gratitude, listing 3 things every night. Not big achievements, but small wins. A warm meal, a kind word from a stranger, learning something new. And slowly his outlook shifted. He no longer waited for the right time to be happy. He created it. Because Shiv Khera was right. Winners don't do different things, they do things differently. And it begins with attitude. Rihan couldn't control the rain, but he could choose to dance in it. Part 7. Building self-esteem. The foundation of a meaningful life. That evening, Rihan stood before the mirror, not to fix his hair or adjust his shirt, but to look deeper into the eyes of a boy who had spent years doubting himself. The next chapter he read from the book was titled Self-Esteem, and the very first line shook him. Self-esteem is the way we feel about ourselves. When we feel good inside, our performance goes up, and when we feel low, our performance goes down. It wasn't about ego, it wasn't arrogance, it was dignity. It was the quiet confidence that comes from knowing, I matter. Rihan's mind flashed back to school days, how teachers only praised the top students, how friends mocked his dreams, how slowly, silently he began to believe, maybe I'm not enough. But this chapter held a different truth. We are all born with potential, but only those who believe in it can unlock it. Shiv Khera emphasized that self-worth isn't earned through achievements, but through character, through the values we live by. Rihan underlined a sentence. Self-esteem is built by doing things that give us a sense of pride and self-respect. He realized he didn't have to climb Everest. He just had to show up for himself every day, keep promises to himself, to take responsibility for his growth, choose honesty over shortcuts, kindness over coolness, discipline over drama. The book also made something clear. Self-esteem is not taught, it is caught, which meant he had to surround himself with people who lifted him, not drained him, who corrected him with care, not crushed him with judgment. Rihan looked around his life. Some friendships had become toxic, some habits destructive, and some beliefs self-sabotaging. He knew what needed to change. He started small, speaking up when he felt disrespected, setting boundaries, appreciating his own progress without waiting for applause. And each time he did, his reflection in the mirror began to change. Not physically, but something in his eyes grew stronger, clearer, brighter, because finally he was learning to see himself, not as the world labeled him, but as he truly was. Self-esteem is not thinking we are better than others. It is knowing that we are not less than anyone. That night, for the first time in a long time, Rihan whispered to his reflection, "I'm proud of you." And this time, he meant it. Part 8, Persistence. Never give up challenges were inevitable. Rihan encountered obstacles, rejections, failures, and moments of doubt. But Shiv Khera reminded him that persistence was the key to overcoming them. Persistence is the twin sister of excellence. One is a matter of quality, the other a matter of time. Every time Rihan failed, he didn't see it as a setback. Instead, he saw it as a lesson. He kept pushing forward, learning from his mistakes, and never giving up. The book shared stories of people who failed multiple times before finding success. Thomas Edison, Michael Jordan, and many others. Rihan understood that setbacks were just stepping stones towards success. He now believed that success wasn't about never failing, but about never quitting. With each failure, he learned more, honed his skills, and became more determined. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Opportunities started showing up. People noticed his persistence, and even when things didn't go as planned, Rihan's resolve grew stronger, knowing that with perseverance, success was inevitable. Part 9, The Power of Action. Turning knowledge into results. Rihan had absorbed so many ideas, so many techniques from the book, but he knew knowledge alone wouldn't create the change he desired. The key, as Shiv Khera wrote, was action. Knowledge without action is worthless. The road to success is paved with action. He had learned a lot about vision, self-esteem, and persistence, but now it was time to implement it all. So Rihan began to take action, bold and decisive steps toward his goals. He applied for jobs he once thought were out of his reach. He sent out proposals, started building a portfolio, and began networking with people who could help him. At first there was uncertainty, but with each move he realized something crucial. Action creates momentum. The more he moved, the more opportunities appeared. The more he acted, the clearer his path became. Shiv Khera's words resonated. Action transforms ideas into results. The knowledge in his head was powerful, but it was the application of that knowledge that truly changed his life. And soon, Rihan wasn't just dreaming about success, he was living it. Part 10, Live While You're Alive, the Final Revelation. The final chapter of Live While You're Alive was the most profound one yet. Shiv Khera wrote that life isn't just about achieving success or making money, it's about living fully. The purpose of life is not to exist, but to live fully, to live with purpose, to live with meaning. Rihan sat back after finishing the last page of the book. The journey of self-discovery and transformation was not just about achieving external goals, it was about enjoying the journey itself. Rihan began to embrace life with a newfound sense of purpose. He learned that the most important part of life is to appreciate the little moments, spending time with loved ones, enjoying nature, and finding joy in the everyday. He no longer felt like he was waiting for life to start. He understood that life is now. Every choice he made, every challenge he faced, and every moment he lived was an opportunity to thrive. Shiv Khera's message was clear. Live while you're alive. Don't wait for the perfect time to begin, because the present moment is where the real magic happens. Conclusion. As Rihan's transformation became more evident to himself and those around him, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. The boy who once felt stuck and insignificant now stood tall, with a clear sense of direction, purpose, and resilience. The teachings of Live While You're Alive by Shiv Khera had breathed new life into him. He now understood the importance of living with intention, of cultivating the right attitude, of taking responsibility, and of following through with action. And through it all, he embraced the most profound lesson. Living fully means living with passion, purpose, and integrity every single day. As he walked through the streets of his city, Rihan smiled. He wasn't just walking anymore, he was living. And for the first time, he felt completely alive.